The White Sox continue to add, but now, after they've added 3 players this weekend, are they done? And is this the team for 2026? Let's talk about it here on the CHGO White Sox podcast. CHGO White Sox podcast coming to you live from Studio West of our West Loop offices here in downtown Chicago. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, my producer, Sarah.
Hi.
Hello. Sarah, they're making money moves. That's what you said.
Making money moves.
I laughed at that. And then I realized, well, there's 2 minutes until the show, so that's just kind of the title today. The Sox are making money moves. And hey, we have some familiar faces in the chat. Fat Hipster, Baseball Tossed, hello. We apparently have a CHGO member that I've never seen before, the Iceberg, salary dump for the Red Sox.
I've seen him before.
Hicks can do something for you guys. Go Red Sox. Go Red Sox. Go CHGO members. Go become a CHGO member if you want to. And then Hoss Bowles is hanging out with us. I truly cannot remember an offseason that had so many small and smart moves. Chop wood, carry water. See, Hoss, you are a new person, and I don't know if this is you being sarcastic or not, because like I agree there are a decent amount of small and smart moves, but then I read chop wood, carry water. Am I being a water carrier for liking small and smart moves? Am I reading into it a little bit? Let's talk about the moves that the White Sox have made. On Friday, we did get the chance to go to Sox Fest as well, so I do just want to give a shout out to the White Sox for allowing us to have press passes. Patrick Norton shot some interviews that we got. We talked to Colson Montgomery. We talked to Tanner McDougal. We talked to Shane Smith. Talked to Grant Taylor. We didn't talk to Kyle Teal. Talked to Sam Antonacci. A lot of good stuff. We have a vlog of sorts coming out. It should be about 10 minutes, so you can take your journey with me through Sox Fest, and we'll play some of the fuller interviews for the show here later on through the week, leading up to pitchers and catchers reporting. But thank you to the White Sox for having us over on Sox Fest. A lot of people are a little stirred up about the alumni home run thing. Brooks Boyer did announce that like on 6 of his score around the summer. So it was true news. I don't know if anything like truly happened at Sox Fest this weekend, but it did seem like another Six Festival weekend. And for an event that had been canceled, I do think the White Sox have done a decent job of bringing back Sox Fest and having it there at the Remover Theater. I also do like the fact that, it's within the community. They're trying to prop up a business, a theater within the community, within Bridgeport, and trying to get more economic stimulation to that area. So I think that's at least great on the White Sox behalf, and also just a fantastic little area there. It's a pretty site there over on 35th. All right. Anyways, let's talk about Austin Hayes. Let's talk about Jordan Hicks. What did our guy Hoss Bowles say? No, meaning we've been looking for quick fixes for about 21 years when we needed more off seasons that were just about chipping away at the problems. You're right. So, welcome to the chat, Hoss Bowles. If you do have any thoughts, let us know in the chat. Hit the thumbs up button, and we will talk about Frank Thomas getting angry on Twitter at the end of the show. But we have important things. The White Sox have made signings and they have made trades. First up, let's talk about Austin Hayes. Sox signing Hayes for a 1-year, $6 million deal. It's a $1 million signing bonus, or maybe it's an option with a $1 million buyout, but he's making like $5 million this year. It's a really decent contract for a guy that is mainly a left-handed smasher. Getting him for around $6 million is decent. Austin Slater was a decent addition last year, and they were able to ship him off for Gage Ziehl, who we'll talk about later on in the show. But I think that getting Hayes at this number, fairly solid. If you wanted to get a left-handed side of the platoon, you might have looked at Mike Yastrzemski, who got 2 years, $3 million from the Royals. I don't know if the Sox were in that type of market. Hayes on the other side is decent. So I don't mind the signing. Baseball Toss said he's been waiting all offseason for Hayes, so you finally got your wishes. And the big thing that people bring up is the prior connection to hitting director Ryan Fuller. And Hayes did have an all-star year in 2023. He started the all-star game in center field over Luis Robert Jr., which is funny because Luis Robert Jr. is still playing center field. Austin Hayes no longer doing so. Hayes hasn't played center field since 2023, hasn't played right field since 2024. He had 39 innings since in 2024. So he hadn't played, hasn't played right field since 2024. 39 innings from 24 and 23. In 2022, had 439 innings, and mostly has shifted over to left field. And I don't know if that's necessarily like he can't play right anymore. Baltimore made adjustments to their outfield that made left field a lot bigger. So I do wonder if they wanted to see if he could cover that spot if he was playing center field just the year before. I don't think his abilities dropped off that drastically. His year in 2024 was not good, though. -8 DRS, -3 outs above average, -4 fielding run value. 2025, it did rebound a little bit better with him changing to Cincinnati, but -2 DRS, 1 out above average, 0 fielding run value. Is he going to be a Gold Glover out there? Likely not. But when you have a lefty up there, he should be one of the best in Major League Baseball. A 155 weighted runs created plus versus left-handers, but again, it's the weak side of the platoon. And the issue that I think it just presents is what the hell are we going to do with Andrew Benintendi? Because he's on the team. And Chris Getz has been talking about him as a DH. I don't think that's happening. I don't think that there's any way that you have Kyle Teel and Edgar Carroll on the same team and you're not trying to get them in the lineup every single day. I think it's a possibility Corey Lee is on the roster this year on the bench because I feel like it's a lot more important to have Teel and Caro get everyday at-bats with then Hayes and Benny being a really decent left field platoon. And maybe you work in Hayes against righties now and then. He's not that decent against righties, just to bring it up. 311 plate appearances, 7 doubles, not bad. Three triples, not bad. Or 2 triples, not bad. 13 homers, hey, not bad. 5% walk rate, 26.7% K rate. Hayes looks a little bit like Junin Sosa, at least from the right-handed side. Versus lefties, looks a lot better. 105 plate appearances, 9 doubles, 3 triples, 2 homers, 11.4% walk rate, 22.9% K rate. Again, the previously mentioned 155 weighted runs created plus. And that's why I wonder if Benny could just be a little bit better. If they just only played him against righties, they didn't play him against lefties, they only played him against righties, could he just be sufficient? Last year, 2025 versus righties, 378 plate appearances, 11 doubles, 14 homers, 10.3 walk percent, 16.1% K percent, 97 weighted runs created plus. You combine the percentage or the plate appearances for Benny versus righties, Hayes versus lefties, you get a player that had 483 plate appearances, 20 doubles, 3 triples, 16 homers, 11% walk rate, around a 19.5% K rate. And I would just estimate because Benny had more plate appearances that it'd be around like a 112, 118 weighted runs created plus. Like that's a positive position. Paying 20, Benny's making 17.1. So paying like $22 million isn't ideal, but a qualifying offer is around $20 million. So, would a left fielder who has like a weighted runs created plus around 120 get a qualifying offer around, $21 million? Possibly. So is this the worst way to fix left field? I don't think so. It's just mainly really focused on Benny being able to play left field, which doesn't seem like the general manager sounds too convinced on. So I don't hate the Hayes signing. The number is very digestible. You look back on his damage per batted ball events, and you could see percentile-wise, 2023 around 68 damage per batted ball event. In 2024 with Baltimore, 91. With Philly in 2024, that dropped down to 65. And then last year, it was around 58th percentile, but still above average. And then you do look at his pulled fly ball percentage. It's fairly decent. It did slip a little bit in the beginning of the year with 2024, but it did seem to rebound. 2023 was 54%. 2024 with Baltimore, 38%. Against Philly, 95%. And then against Cincinnati, 53%. I think that also has to do with the adjustment to Camden, right? I wonder if he just didn't want to pull fly balls into that cavern out in left field. And then the other thing too, Seager percentage, where does he rank? 2022, 72 percentile. 2023 is all-star year, 93 percentile. 2024, 57 percentile. Fell to 2 percentile with Philly, but then last year rebounded to 96 percentile. 96 percentile. He should be able to at least make the right decisions on what to swing at and what not to swing at. I know that you look at the Savant page, It's a decent amount of blues, but he does at least put the bat on the ball. Should he strike out a ton? I mean, again, it's around 25% sure, but he should be able to pepper a decent amount of balls in play. I like him versus lefties. I don't love him in general, but overall, it's a fine move for what ultimately is comparable to 2019. This is not a year about free agency. This is not a year about trades. This is not about defining the franchise towards the next step. And I even called out Chris Getz when he was on the recap podcast and he said they're no longer rebuilding, they're building. That's not true. They very possibly can lose 100 games this year. I don't think they will. I think they'll probably be around 68 to 72. So, little game, a little couple, maybe 95 losses, somewhere around there. But I don't think this team is currently building. If they were building, it wouldn't be adding Hayes. It wouldn't be taking on a salary dump for Hicks. It wouldn't be swapping prospects in Ziehl and Sandlin. You'd be going towards the $100 million numbers. You'd be going to sign cornerstones of your franchise. Hayes on a 1-year deal is not that. Hicks on a 2-year deal practically is not that. Sandlin, maybe, but that's a guy that only pitched like 76 innings between AA and AAA last year. So is this a team that's currently building? I don't think so. But as our new friend in the chat, who is it again? You want to scroll up? The guy with the bowling pick? Hoss Bowles. As he mentions, this isn't about a quick fix. This isn't about let's just take the third best right fielder on the free agent market and put him out there. Hello, Adam Eaton. That's how you get that reunion, right? They love Jock Peterson, but they didn't love him at a $10 million number, so they gave Adam Eaton 7.5. Right? Like, this is about stripping what was wrong with the White Sox, trying to add, I think Ryan McGuffey mentioned in that interview with Chris Getz, like 25 people to their baseball department. They have grown this organization. They have grown this front office, and they are trying to just be smarter on their year-to-year moves. And I think that this makes the 2026 White Sox better. The Hayes, Hicks, and Sandlin edition, I think that makes the 2026 White Sox better. And it's mostly about seeing what you have from Teal, Caro, Mydroth, Colson, whoever else may come up, Antonacci. What do you have in these guys, and what can you truly fill out coming into your 2027 opening day roster? Because right now, this is not a team that's competing. This is not a team that even when they hit their 100th percentile on a year is going to be competing for an AL Central. Not with this rotation, and you look at the lineup, it's fine, but I don't think it's AL Central winning. They don't have a star. Maybe Colson turns into that. Maybe Teal turns into that. But a star like a J-Ram, not really. They don't have a star like Scooble. You need some. You don't have a star like Witt. You need some sort of player to take you over that threshold. And right now, they don't have that. They obviously can get that at some point, whether it's Colson on the current team, Teal on the current team, Bonham coming up, Chalowski could be the number 1 pick in July. It's not doable for the team, but they have to prove something. Colton, we'll answer one more question before we jump into the chat. And shout out to Reyes Pro. We'll answer your question in a second here too. Colton, though, saying, do you think another 19-win jump is completely unrealistic? I know I do. And even if they did, it's only 79 wins, sub 500, but definitely moving in the correct direction. I would say that another 19-win jump is likely 100th percentile for that team. Not winning the AL Central, but being close to it, again, being close to 500. Like, that's probably the best that you could hope for. And if that happens, it's like, all right, take my money. Like, maybe I should just become a season ticket holder because, when they're good and you could sell those Cubs Sox money, I mean, they basically pay for themselves, right? Like, if they win 79 games, I absolutely think that, I don't know if it's unrealistic, but it's probably best case scenario that they take another 19-win jump. If they take a 7 to 12 win jump, though, I think that that's fairly realistic and most likely doable. They should be able to improve. And although, they didn't make this team strides better, they just made them able to tread water decently. I don't know if Hayes will be dealt at the deadline too. Like, I think that they just might keep Hayes for a year. Hayes is mostly, I think, trying to play for another contract next year. Hicks, we'll see what they have for him, but it really seems like this trade's mostly about Sandlin. Like, they're going to pay Hicks about, $8 million over the next 2 years? like $4 million for this year, $4 million next year, like with Boston eating 8 of the mill, like it should be fairly not substantial, but like digestible for the White Sox. We're going to take a break here on the CHGO White Sox podcast. We'll talk more about Hicks. We'll talk more about Sandlin. We'll talk about that trade in general, what they got rid of in Ziehl. If you do have any thoughts, let us know in the chat, and we'll be back here on the CHGO White Sox podcast. We want to let you know about our friends over at Xfinity. What if you could have reliable and intelligent Wi-Fi? And what if you could keep that reliable and intelligent Wi-Fi at the same price for 5 years? That's the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee. Imagine Wi-Fi that makes everything in your home work together, that finds and fixes problems before you even notice them, like a super intelligent Wi-Fi with a sixth sense, and that lets you stream the game even when your whole family's online, and all of your devices work in perfect harmony with Xfinity's Wi-Fi for 5 whole years. And the best part is there's no annual contracts, there's no hidden fees, and Xfinity's best equipment is included. And take it from Sox fans, a lot can change over 5 years, but Wi-Fi, your Wi-Fi, it should stay reliable, and the price should stay put. So lock in your price today and unlock the possibilities with Xfinity. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that. Select plans only. Restrictions apply. And we want to let you know about our friends over at Bet365. The big game is approaching on Sunday. And with the big game, it means it's the final game of the NFL season, which means if you want to bet on the big game, the West Coast team versus the East Coast team, the blue and green team versus the blue and red team, go make your choice with our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary with our friends over at Bet365. If your team somehow takes a 17-point lead, it happened with the East Coast team before. They came back and won in miraculous fashion. But you get an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections marked as winners. So download the app and use code CHGO365 when you sign up. Breaking news from our friends over at Bet365. New customers now get $200 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up and use the code CHGO365. You can deposit $10 into your account and place a bet for $5 to get $200 in bonus bets. If your bet wins or loses, bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more, because whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, crisis counseling and referral services can be accessed by calling 1-800-GAMBLER, in-app only. Welcome back to CHGO White Sox podcast. If you haven't hit that thumbs up button, make sure you do. Make sure you're subscribing to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. If you have any thoughts on the White Sox offseason, let us know in the chat. We'll get to some of your thoughts in a second, but we want to let you know about our trip out to Arizona. We are taking a road trip on March 5th to the 8th in 2026. It's presented by our friends over at Shady Rays. Use code CHGO to get 35% off polarized sunglasses at shadyrays.com. But we are very, very excited for this. On the 5th, we are going to be going to a Bulls game. So if you want to see Bulls' son, you can come hang out with the CHGO crew there. On the 6th, we have a golf outing, which I believe Lance Briggs will be present for. I will be going to I believe where the Diamondbacks play. The Diamondbacks are Mariners to see the White Sox game. So I won't be at the golf outing, but you can come with me to the White Sox game on the 6th. On the 7th, we do have a Q&A, I believe, or maybe that, and then that should be fun. We have Ben coming down.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a bunch of different Q&As, interviews we'll be incorporating in.
And I believe there's a couple Cubs games as well, but we don't need to talk about that. But yeah, feel free to click the link that Sarah just dropped in the chat. If you do want to join us, head over to allchgo.com/events, and you can see the CHGO Spring Training Road Trip, again, presented by our friends over at Shady Rays. We are very, very excited to head out to spring training. I've never been, so I'm excited to get away from the very, 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 very cold and depressing Chicago winter and get out to some sun. Right? It's always 80 there. Knowing my luck, it'll probably be like 40. Woohoo. Ryan asks, can I golf? I have clubs, and I have used them before. Have I ever done like 9 holes, 18 holes? I think like 3 or 4 times in my life. I'm a lot better with irons than I am drivers. I don't know if that's a baseball thing. I get really freaked out about the tee. Tee height, kind of get really into my head. It's kind of why I wasn't a good pitcher. I'd have to think about, like, what am I going to do? I got to throw a fastball for a strike. It was really only when people were on base that my mind kind of quiet down. And it feels the same with my irons. Anyways, let's get into some of the chats. Evan saying, this is how you succeed and build a farm. Sign 1-year deals and trade them for prospects at the deadline. Welcome to the 21st century. I agree. And, hey, if Hayes is, again, hitting 155 at the deadline, just like, Baltimore was able to trade him in 2024 to Philly, he easily could be trade bait. And Cincinnati, too. Cincinnati was contending for a playoff spot. That's why they kept him around. If the White Sox aren't contending and Hayes can do something for a team on a one-year deal, he's easily able to be moved. And then that leads to the Austin Slater thing, right? Like, Austin Slater was the signing that was the right-handed side of the platoon last year, Tauchman being the other side. And they end up trading him to New York, and they trade him for Gage Ziehl. And the White Sox then take Gage Ziehl and trade him for Jordan Hicks, David Sandlin, and $8 million. And there's players to be named later, so I guess this deal isn't fully finished, but likely nothing of note will be added to this. The White Sox pretty much bought a prospect. They liked Ziehl more than they liked Sandlin. I think Sandlin shows starting pitcher tendencies, and Getz mentioned that he's going to have a chance to start. He was starting off Tommy John last year, and pretty much from April 5th, 2025 to August 8th, they were throwing him in long rolls, not necessarily starters every single time. The first 7 games, he was starters for about 4 to 5 innings. And then even on, May 23rd, he came in the 4th inning to pitch to the 8th, but he pitched 5 total innings. The next game, he went out and threw 7 innings, 6 innings, 5 innings, 6 innings, right? Like, he did a really decent job in Double-A as a starter. And then he got promoted to Triple-A, made a start in August, and then got demoted to the bullpen. Had some outings of length, some 1 1/3, 2 innings, also some just like third of an inning, 2/3 of an inning, right? So he didn't really have a ton of time to start in AAA. So I do believe that they want to give Sandlin time to start. If the Red Sox were going to use Sandlin, they would likely force him into a bullpen role because they have a ton of starters. They went out and pretty much added a ton of starting this offseason, along with several prospects they have. Connor Early is one of them that's been brought up in possible White Sox trades, right? Sandlin didn't have a spot as a starter. Ziehl might have a spot for the Red Sox in the bullpen coming up, but the White Sox see Sandlin as 6 years of control as a starter compared to Ziehl, where, maybe Ziehl has a couple better seasons. Maybe he ends up posting like a 2-WAR season. But if Sandlin can go as a starter and give you, a couple, 5 or 6 1-WAR seasons, like, it's a decent trade. So I do think that this trade is a smart one from Chris Getz. It's not flashy. It's fairly gross. You're taking on Jordan Hicks, who's fine. He's 29 years old, and you probably remember when he was hitting like 103, right? And you thought maybe this would be like the next Aroldis Chapman. Josh from Sox Machine compared him to Mason Miller. He really hasn't been throwing that hard as of late. Ever since he's left St. Louis, he really hasn't been rack shitting it up. When you look at StatCast by pitch velocity, he was hitting 104 in 2023, 103.8 in 2023. But you don't really see a lot of the 2024s. He did make a transition to a starter with San Francisco in 2024. But even in 2025, 2024, he really wasn't hitting that top velo. And that's the thing that really started to show itself with Hicks and his transition to being a starter in San Francisco was, if this player doesn't have high velocity, then he's really unable to get swings and misses. With his low spin rate, I mean, even a sinker that is around past couple of years, 95, it's a sub 2,000 spin rate, where you could look at Noah Schultz, it's around a 2,500 spin rate. I really think that Hicks is a fine project to take on. If they want to try to give him starts, whatever, I don't think it's like worth it. He's really only worth it if he has that velocity, and maybe not 104, right? But if he's able to touch 100, that sinker should be able to play up. He really can't sit 96, 97 with it because there is no real movement to it. It's mainly just like a straight missile. So if he's able to get that straight missile up to 100, 101 consistently, he might be a decent project to take on, especially with Boston eating $8 million. So I think that this is a gross trade, but I think it's a smart trade. From 2023 to 2024, Hicks 175 and a third innings pitched, 3.80 ERA, around 1.8 BWAR, around 0.9 BWAR in each season, 108 ERA plus. The biggest thing is controlling walks for him. If he can be under or around 4 walks per 9 and be around 9 Ks per 9 or 10 Ks per 9, he should be a fine bullpen piece for them. And really, and the reality is, after signing Sir Anthony Dominguez, you have Grant Taylor, you have Jordan Leisure. Argument is, this is like the fourth best right-handed arm in the pen. And Hicks has got a decent history. Like, this is a fine bullpen. They don't really have a lefty that I love, but you look at Dominguez, you look at Hicks, you look at Leisure, Vassell, and Taylor. I trust those 5 guys. It's really Gilbert or Iser. Which lefty do you want? Murphy as well, who they acquired from Boston. And then the question of, will they keep Alberto and Paez, the Rule 5 picks? I would love to see them try out those projects, but it did seem like they were interesting projects, some real diamonds in the rough projects. Paez is very, very green, very, very young. Both of them haven't pitched above AA. I'd be surprised if both of the Rule 5 picks made it, but I do think Chris Getz is doing a decent job so far. Where are we at time-wise, Sarah? Perfect. We'll do a little 4-minute rant here. Maybe not even a rant. That's a little bit too overstated, and then we'll take it into the next break. I think this is a very important day, February 2nd, for Chris Getz. When I heard him on Sox Machine, it seemed like he felt pretty comfortable with the end of this being this kind of acquisition being the end of the season for him, end of the offseason for him. We're approaching on the 15th when pitchers and catchers report to Arizona. I likely think the White Sox are done. And they've spent a large majority of the Robert money. I think it's about $1 million to $2 million left. So they've done a large majority of what they should do this offseason. However, Robert Murray of Fansided says that he believes the White Sox are not done. If the White Sox go out and make another substantial addition, and I'm not saying a $2 million addition that takes them to $90 million, if they make a substantial addition around $5 million to $8 million, and this payroll is around $95 to $100 million, I kind of have no choice but to believe in Chris Getz. I thought the $85 million salary projection that Josh Nelson talked about over in Studio B when he was here in November, it seemed high. Now they're at $88 million. If they are truly able to go $10 million over their projection, it will just feel so abnormal as a White Sox fan. I agree with most people. Like, I think BZ said it, and unfortunately Jim Bowden said it too. Sox have had around a C, C minus, C plus offseason, right? I would maybe even say B minus if you want. Like, Mudasaka was a really good signing. But if they go out and make one more addition, it's not only doing what I think was appropriate, it is going above and beyond. And if even in a 2019-like season, Chris Getz can convince Jerry Reinsdorf to go above and beyond, I would be very, very impressed with Getz's offseason. Right now, I think it's a fine offseason. They're going to be around 100 losses, I think above 100 losses, but, things can go wrong with the starting rotation. It's not a starting rotation I die for. If you are able to push Newcomb into the bullpen and maybe not have Tyler Gilbert be your lefty, I'd be a lot better off with this team. And if they are able to get one final starter, I may be able to see this team winning 2 games within a series. I just want to see them prove it. I don't really want to give Chris Getz any credit right now because I think it's a fine offseason. I've been impressed with his moves. This Hicks move's a lot better than going and get Nick Castellanos and having the Phillies eat $17 million, right? I'm not interested in that deal. I'm a lot more interested in buying Sandlin and seeing if you could have Hicks kind of just get you to the end of the year, right? I don't know if he's necessarily a trade guy, but at the end of the day, if they're able to continue this momentum and maybe add one more starting piece, they even wanted to bring back Mike Tauchman along with the starting piece, I wouldn't hate it. They don't really have a left-handed bat, but I really do think that the White Sox can put a cherry on top of this fairly unfun offseason. And it's not unfun because, they didn't get X, Y, or Z. I know they got Mooney. I don't really want to be complaining. It's just after 324 losses, I don't want to be like, yay, they're around 95 losses. Woohoo, this is fun, right? I think that they're doing a solid job. It's more about next year and what Chris Getz can do to take this team to actual sustained success rather than, doing just 2019 all over again. Can you actually make this the team from 2019, have them have success in 2020, maybe have a postseason performance, win another division, and not have it end after 2021? Can he build a consistent winner? I'm unsure. I'd love to see it. We'll talk about this and more after the CHGO White Sox podcast takes a break. We want to let you know about our friends over at Huel. Check our friends out over at Huel at huel.com/White Sox 15. You get 15% off with code White Sox 15. We are already 1 month into 2026, and it might be tough to be hitting those goals that you set at the beginning of the year. Maybe you were a little bit overzealous, and life has now caught up with you coming into February. I know that several times throughout January, I forgot my lunch entirely, and thankfully, Huel has sent over some products for us to try, and it has completely filled me up. It's easier than meal prep. It's easier than making soup for 2 hours and then bringing the soup in. You know, sometimes the soup just completely spills over your bag. Not with Huel. You know, you don't have shrimp scampi all over your backpack. You'll have a nice, delicious beverage to take down. It's under $5. It's way faster, again, than meal prep, and it fills us up for hours. It's under $5 a meal, and it's pairs well with their Black Edition powder. So you can try the ready-to-drink protein drink, or you can try the powder and control your macros a little bit more specifically. But go check out our friends over at Huel, huel.com/White Sox 15. Use code White Sox 15 to get 15% online with our friends over at Huel. New customers only. Thank you to Huel for partnering and supporting our show. If you're busy, this is an absolute game changer. We also want to let you know about our friends over at Four Seasons. For all the right reasons, call 866-4 Seasons. Ooh, I don't know if we're singers, Sarah. We want to let you know about our friends over at Four Seasons. Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric has been serving Chicagoland for over 50 years. Our friends over at Four Seasons are trusted local experts. If you have not checked out your furnace in a long time, Four Seasons can help you out. Winter is here, and you have to ask yourself, now as we are in the middle of winter, is your home's heating up for the challenge? If you're thinking about a whole home generator as well, they have you covered at Four Seasons. They guarantee same-day installation for all your heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical, and generator needs, and they have no extra charges for nights, weekends, or holidays. So if you are in a jam, or if you do want to get ahead of maybe some future issues, call our friends over at Four Seasons, who have been serving Chicagoland for over 50 years. Your trusted local experts for heating, air conditioning, plumbing, electric, and generators is our friends Four Seasons. Visit fourseasonsheatingcooling.com for all their special offers and money-saving coupons. That's fourseasonsheatingcooling.com. Welcome back to the CHGO White Sox podcast. If you have any thoughts, let us know in the comments. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel and hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. Just real quick before we get into the, taking temp segment, Shy Sex Anthony asking, when does Drew Thorpe come back from Tommy John surgery? I would not expect it to be April. I don't think that they're in a rush to bring him back. I do think it's likely he'd probably make some starts in Charlotte. So if you're looking for a Drew Thorpe return, late May, June, I think the reason they signed Newcomb is to have flexibility. The reason they have Paez is to have flexibility. I mean, you could even see Vassell get a start. Tyler Gilbert once threw a no-hitter. I think he can give you some decent amount of innings if you need some length. And hell, I mean, Taylor could give you 2 innings, and Hicks could probably give you 2 innings. So I think that this is, right now shows that they're not planning on Drew Thorpe being a part of the rotation for a while. And if they do have to get through, him, Kai Busch, I think even Baroa's off Tommy John, those 3 are coming off Tommy John. You'd have to see. And the other thing too, part of taking on these 2 players in Hicks and Sandlin and only trading Ziehl, a guy that wasn't on the 40-man roster, you had to make 2 DFAs. And along with the Sarah Anthony Dominguez one, they DFA'd Brian Ramos. Brian Ramos got traded to Baltimore for cash considerations. Found that weird. I don't think he's going to last with Baltimore, but we'll have to see what happens to Brian Ramos. Adios. But they DFA Jairo Iriarte and Drew Romo. I think Romo easily has a possibility of getting picked up. There's not a decent amount of catchers, and at worst, he could be a AAA catcher for you, and I think he has an option. So Romo, I can absolutely see getting picked up off of waivers. Iriarte kind of sucks, and it really does just feel awful to say that. But he always seemed to have a starter profile, and it didn't seem like he'd ever be a reliever. And now that he doesn't have really like a ton of great hopes to start, I don't think that this is a bullpen arm. Like, this is a guy that I think would have to work his way back, like all the way from Birmingham. His stuff didn't seem too dynamic. When he made his major league debut, he really couldn't find the zone or really throw anything that was above anyone's knees. I wasn't impressed with Jairo Iriarte, the player, and I'd be fairly surprised if they do lose him to some team picking him up. I don't think he's that impressive, and for a team to, take him on the 40-man, I think that would be pretty brutal. And it was brutal for the Sox to continue to carry him. I didn't think they'd get rid of him because he was a part of that Cease trade. Here they are putting him on waivers. We'll see if he clears. I do think he has a possibility, but man, yeah, he's been rough and a huge disappointment. Zavala had a better year in 2025, but absolutely, Thorpe and the guy I'm talking about right now, Iriarte, just have not lived up to the billing. So it's been frustrating. All right, let's take the temperature with our friends over at Four Seasons. Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric are your experts. Your trusted local experts are Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. Visit fourseasonsheatingcooling.com for all their special offers and money-saving coupons. That's fourseasonsheatingcooling.com. We have to talk about it. The White Sox, to celebrate Black History Month, put out a tweet. In celebration of Black History Month, we reflect upon momentous first for the Chicago White Sox organization. And they go through 1933, Comiskey Park hosts the first ever East-West Negro Leagues All-Star Game. Funnily enough, in 1933, the first ever actual All-Star Game happened. It was kind of almost like it could have just happened before Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. You had the Negro Leagues and the AL and NL playing against each other. If only this damn country wasn't so racist in 1933, maybe we could have had baseball be normal. So that is just it's obviously a great first. But in 1960, outfielder Al Smith becomes the first Black All-Star in White Sox history. That's also absurd. The gap from 1933 between 1960 for a Black White Sox All-Star. 1971, Danny Goodwin becomes the first African-American player selected with the number 1 overall pick by the White Sox in the MLB draft. He did not sign with the team and attended college. 1977, Harold Baines becomes the second African-American player selected with the first overall pick. There's the thing, though, and this is where we get off, and we'll get to the ultimate, kind of comeuppance of this, but reflect on a momentous first. Then 1977, it says Harold Baines becomes second African-American player. May 1st, 1951, Minnie Minoso breaks the White Sox color barrier. Sam Hairston, July 21st, and Bob Boyd on September 8th joined Minoso later that year in breaking the White Sox color barrier. In 1966, Carlos May becomes the first African-American player selected by the White Sox in the first round of the amateur draft. In 1972, Dick Allen becomes the first Black player in White Sox history to win AL MVP honors. Frank Thomas joined Allen as MVP in 1993 and 1994. In June 30, 1978, Larry Doby becomes the second African-American in MLB history. Doby earned his first win as White Sox manager on July 2nd that year, 8-5 at Minnesota. I guess, they don't say it there, but that also does imply if he becomes the second African-American in MLB history, he is the first White Sox manager of African-American descent. And then you look at the 1990s, the White Sox bold rebrand anchored by the black and silver colorway and iconic Sox logo transcended baseball to become a defining visual of 90s hip-hop culture worn and amplified by Black artists across Chicago and beyond with a picture of Bo Jackson. 1992, the White Sox become one of the first major league teams to hold a Negro Leagues reunion and recognition. Then on October 20th, Ken Williams becomes the first African-American general manager in Chicago sports history and the third in MLB history. On August 1st, 2020, White Sox manager Jerry Manuel, pitcher James Baldwin, and catcher Charles Johnson are part of the first all-black mound meeting in MLB history. I do think that that's cool. I know some people scoffed at that. I think that was cool. 2021 to 2023, Ken Williams and Jerry Manuel formed the first Black general manager tandem in MLB history. 2005, Ken Williams becomes just the second African-American general manager to win the World Series, joining Yankees Bob Watson in 1996. I guess first Black executive to win with the White Sox. Didn't make that clarification. 2022 White Sox ACE program aimed at providing a pathway to baseball for African-American youth wins Major League Baseball's prestigious Allen H. Siegel Award for Philanthropic Excellence. And then in 2024, Will Venable becomes the third, not a first, third African-American manager in White Sox history. He is one of 2 active black MLB managers. And the last thing that I'm going to be upset about is the team celebrating this history month. I understand Frank Thomas's upsetness over this, and Frank Thomas responded, "I'm keeping the receipts. Weird you didn't mention me." I don't need to talk about DEI on this program. Over the past year, weirdly enough, coincidentally, a lot of companies have rolled back their DEI. So I did like at least people taking interest in Black History Month and the White Sox efforts to celebrate that. But Frank being scoffed by this, I get it. He is very important. And let's again point to Frank Thomas, who's on the set right here. I am blocking him, but Frank is with us today. It's a month. You don't think at any point they're not going to celebrate that guy? They could celebrate him in June. They could celebrate him in August, September. I mean, he is a very, very, very well worth celebrating person, or a person worth celebrating. Okay, and the set's breaking. We're back. I just think the people, shockingly, were a little bit too overreactionary. I do think that it's very likely that the White Sox had something this month to celebrate Frank Thomas. And if, as people have brought up, now that Frank has said this, any effort to include Frank Thomas into the White Sox celebration of Black History Month will now just feel like, oh, well, they forgot about him with this thing. And it does suck the White Sox did not include him because they could have easily avoided this. He was, as my guy Herb Lawrence pointed out, the first ever player to win 2 Silver Sluggers at multiple positions, first base and DH. He is the first Black player to win back-to-back AL MVPs. Morgan and Banks did it. That Banks. Morgan and Banks did it in the NL before Frank Thomas did. Bonds and Judge have done it since. But I'm not buying into what the Giggities is saying. It's a White Sox Reinsdorf thing. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt over the years with their incompetence. I get that. I don't know if this was incompetence though. I think that they had. So again, we don't know because anything after the fact will feel like them just making up for it. I feel like they had something likely planned to include Frank Thomas and celebrate Frank Thomas. I understand that there's been a rift between the White Sox and Frank Thomas, stay out of White Sox business, famously said by Ken Williams, but Kenny's no longer there. And people brought up that Frank Thomas is no longer on the NBC Sports Chicago postgame show or CHSN postgame show, but he was. Like, this guy had his jersey retired. He's been to the park several times for several celebrations. He wasn't there for the 2005 team, but he did say something being like, I don't really feel like this is my thing. I don't want to overshine the guys that played there. I only played 34 games that season, right? Like, he took himself out of that celebration. The reason he's not on CHSN anymore is because they don't have NBC's money to spend. When you could just spend NBC's money and saying, hey, we're bringing Frank Thomas on, it's easy to get that check to clear. When they're doing it by themselves, of course they don't want to pay Hall of Famer with Hall of Famer price tag Frank Thomas. So I don't know if they're just being cheap, which is typical. But I don't know if it's necessarily I don't think this is a riff. I think Frank is a fairly proud person. I think that he's fine to say that he should have been on that graphic, which is absolutely fair. But to turn this into rehashing what they've done over the past 30 years with each other, I think is ridiculous. I know he said he's keeping the receipts, but you don't think the White Sox called out Frank Thomas and said, hey, yeah, we had stuff planned to tweet about you later on in the month. We're sorry that happened. If they want Frank Thomas to show up in 2026 at the ballpark, they can have him show up. If they pay him to be on the postgame show, I think he would happily be on the postgame show. I don't think that there was malintent with this. Ryan asked, how do you casually leave off one of your most important players off something like that? Because maybe this wasn't about player excellence. I think this was about first. And that's why I try to point out when they put in second there or third, right? I think part of that was because MLB history, but even then it's funny, like 2024, like Will Venable becomes the third black manager in Sox history. Like, well, no, like that's not a first, but I do think that there was likely going to be something for Black History Month that showed off Frank Thomas. I don't think it was casually done, because I do think that a lot of this was planned out. So if they share like their social media calendar, I bet there's something in the month of February that will promote Frank Thomas's career. I just think that this was a very clunkily made graphic that includes several seconds and thirds in a graphic that should be about firsts. So I don't think that this was intentional to slight Frank. I know that there is past history, but I think that this is likely very, 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 very overblown. Should he have been on the graphic? Sure. Will we remember this in 3 years? No. I think that's going to do it for the CHGO White Sox podcast. And again, I don't think we're going to hear about it, because I think Frank Thomas and the White Sox relationship is fine. I think you're going to see Frank Thomas at the ballpark at some point. You're going to see Frank Thomas bobbleheads. You're going to see Frank Thomas making appearances on Chuck's podcast probably at some point. Chuck probably will do like a solid to FT35 vodka and have him on. I don't think this is a big deal, but that's going to do it for the CHGO White Sox podcast. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 o'clock with another episode of the CHGO White Sox podcast. And shout out to Tina, shout out to Melissa as well over on South Sox. Saw them this weekend. Shout out to Hannah as well, who I met. Shout out to them. Seeing her in the chat. Maybe Willie's typing that for her while she's on the walking pad. Anyways, that's going to do it for the CHGO White Sox podcast. We'll be back tomorrow. And Jen Dog is right. They probably should have just put his picture there instead of Bo, and we might not have had any issue. But we don't know. I reached out to Frank Thomas. He weirdly didn't respond, but maybe if we pay him money to promote his vodka, he'd come on. So if you want to start a Kickstarter for Frank Thomas to come on the podcast and promote his vodka, let's get on it. That's going to do it for the CHGO White Sox podcast. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
We all silly like the mayor.